Today I'm going to talk about collaborating with our state and federal stakeholders. It's been definitely been a long journey. Um, will I be exchanging the slides or will you?
I'll be changing them.
Okay, next slide, please. Florida Keys Mosquito Control, we have about 120 miles of road. You see how skinny the islands are. But we have almost 1,800 square miles of property within the Florida Keys. Only 1,700 are owned or managed by federal, state, and environmental organizers. 5% of those areas are areas that Florida Keys Mosquito Control District can manage and treat as needed with the entire IMM products. Next slide, please. Uh, in the Florida Keys, we have approximately 850 islands throughout the entire Keys. 51 of them are connected by bridges on US 1, and there are about 70 uninhabited islands that are not connected with bridges. Next. Florida Keys Mosquito Control, we have a bridge of a board of 5 commissioners. We're very lucky to have a broad range. They all have multiple careers that do help our organization. We have a physician, we have an accountant, a banker, and our chairman is a retired chemist, and we have an IT specialist. So with this broad range of uh, of board, they really have a great understanding and education of what we need to do as a district. Next slide, please. Florida Keys Mosquito Control, we have about a $15 million operating budget. We have 72 full-time employees. We do have a part-time staff, usually seasonal for ULV fogging, and we do have part-time pilots on call. We have 37 inspectors on the ground. You've seen how far the Florida Keys are, the 120-mile stretch. We have 3 offices, one in Key Largo, one in Marathon, and one in the Lower Keys. The Lower Keys in the presentation, you'll see the large areas in the Lower Keys, but we have 6 inspectors in the Lower Keys, 6 in the Middle Keys, 14 inspectors in the Lower Keys, and 11 that are concentrated just in the island of Key West. Currently, we have 5 helicopters, 3 H-125s, and 2 Long Ranger Bell 206s. Recently, we just phased out our fixed wing aircraft, which is, and we're turning all helicopter fleet. Next slide, please. Florida Keys Mosquito Control District, I feel that it's a little different than many areas. We have a lot of protected land. Key West itself is the urbanized area. There's over 25,000 people just in that small 2 by 4 mile island. And then we have the Lower Keys, which is a lot of those offshore islands that produce mosquitoes that come onto the land. And then, of course, we have uh, the rest of the Keys, over 100 miles of islands that are sparse neighborhoods with homes in between, and then the mangrove swamp areas with hardwood hammocks and percolation holes. So we have a whole gambit of different areas and communities to treat. Next slide, please. Now, many years ago, Florida was considered uninhabitable, and that included the Keys. Next. because the Florida Keys and Florida were considered uninhabitable, we found a need that we needed to have partnerships, especially with U.S. Florida Fish and Wildlife and Florida Fish and Wildlife. We also partner with our state parks. We have the Navy, GADF, Army Special Forces. So we have a lot of partners. We back in the day we had multiple thuringiensis invasions, mostly coming from the offshore islands that are so close to the areas. We were getting human landing rate counts of over 3,500 mosquitoes per minute. There were 100 to 200 mosquitoes per minute in the residential areas, and we had nightly trap counts that were over 75,000 mosquitoes per trap. Due to the migration, especially on Big Pine and No Name Key, which are managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, we need to access those offshore islands and reduce the impacts for U.S. Fish and Wildlife, but also to protect and be able to live in the lower Keys. Next slide, please. The Great White Heron Fish National Wildlife Refuge was established in 1938. There's over 200,000 acres and only 7,600 acres of land. We had every habitat in that area, from mangrove swamp, pinewood rockland, hardwood hammock, and of course salt marsh. Next slide, please. Here we have a picture of the Great White Heron National Wildlife Refuge and the National Key Deer Refuge. You can see all the areas in red. Those are areas managed from both of those agencies, and everything in red has a management plan of what we can and cannot do in those areas. And so you can see within neighborhoods in the very small amounts of area that we can do something. Next slide, please. We also are working with the National Key Deer Refuge, which was established in 1957. They have over 9,000 acres. They have habitats of the pine rockland, hardwood hammock, freshwater, wetlands, salt marsh, mangrove swamps. We have many areas with percolation when the tides are coming up. Even if there isn't water attached, it is percolating up through the ground. Next slide, please. In the National Key Deer Refuge, there are 17 listed species right now, but they are periodically adding more. Within the last 7 years, we've been having a few of the butterfly species that are being added more continuously on these. The key deer are protected, so are the lower key marsh rabbit, the white rice, but they're not really concerned as much with mosquito control with some of those species. But now that the Miami blue butterfly and the Bertram leaf-winged butterfly, the swallowtail butterfly, these are more interesting for U.S. Fish and Wildlife that we needed to work much more closely with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to compromise on these. Next slide, please. In the early 2000s, the production of mosquitoes was coming to the inshore islands. You could see US 1 on the bottom of the screen. Everything attached to US 1 has houses, neighborhoods in those areas, and you can see all the offshore islands on the tip of those islands where the mosquito production was coming from those islands to that We have a great relationship with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And at that time in the early 2000s, we were lucky enough to have a progressive uh, uh, refuge manager that was willing to negotiate and talk to us and let us do some experiments. Next slide, please. So 2001, we started marking mosquitoes, all those offshore islands that you've seen, all those and more. We were dusting mosquitoes as they were coming off as adult larvae, and we are also trapping and dusting mosquitoes. Every island we dusted with different colors, and then we would release the mosquitoes on the offshore islands and then trap them on the main islands. On Big Pine and No Name is where we started. We did this for 8 weeks. We did 167 collections. 412,000 marked mosquitoes were collected on the inshore islands. Next slide, please. Here, just a representative of the study islands. You could see in the yellow, that's where we were trapping the mosquitoes inshore. You could see Annette Key, Mayo Key, Water Keys, Little Pine Key. And as I said, each of those mosquito batches were dusted with different colors. So what we were trying to mark is where they were coming from and were they definitely coming to the maiden land. And we worked very closely. It was a 3-year project dusting these mosquitoes. Next slide, please. So after coming up with all those results and showing that they were definitely coming from the offshore islands, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, of course, wants to protect the pristine islands and areas of the Florida Keys. 95% of the Florida Keys are protected areas. So we wanted to negotiate the risk managements, and we needed to compromise. They, of course, never want any control, and we need to protect the public. We established special use permits for the trapping and entering on the offshore islands. We can't, we have one path on each island that we can't disturb too much of uh, uh, the habitat on that island. We worked for years establishing reasonable, obtainable goals for both us and them. And then a long time establishing reporting of what we've done every year, and of course that's a living, breathing document, and they're always needing more or less on that, and we do that on a yearly basis still to this date. Next slide, please. This is just an example for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. This is a neighborhood in Big Pine Key. You can see all the areas in yellow. These are protected lands for U.S. Fish and Wildlife. In the middle of that, that's a neighborhood. They've obtained lands in between all the houses. So here comes part of our give and take. We gave them all the big areas around them so we could, with a threshold, we are allowed to ULV with a truck in that neighborhood without turning the ULV machine on and off. So those are the kind of give and takes that we worked out on our management plan. Next slide, please. On the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Agreement, we established several, at the beginning, we had several no spray zones. And at the beginning, we were allowed to spray 9 ULV missions aerially per year. And they had to be 5 days apart. The winds had to be equal or less to 15 miles an hour. And then actually each part of the island had a different landing rate count action threshold. ULV application by truck also varied by section with the landing rate counts associated with it. We do have to renew this management plan every year and create an annual report. Actually, I just finished that report last year, and this year it was 190 pages. It literally took me 2 months to finish that one. So next slide, please. So we also work very closely with Florida Fish and Wildlife. Right here I have an example of one of the 23 maps that is regulated by Florida Fish and Wildlife. Both Florida Fish and Wildlife and U.S. Fish and Wildlife have lands, and Florida will manage some of U.S. Fish and Wildlife property, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife will manage some of Florida's, just so we can work together to make it one report for each organization. This is one of my biggest islands. You can see in the uh, where we can put a truck, what the landing rate count is to have a truck. You can see many areas there in green that we are only allowed to larvicide. And then the yellow areas, you can see that we need an average landing rate in that whole island of an average of 20 mosquitoes per minute to be able to have an aerial adulticide mission. And I'm sure, as you all know, an average of 20 mosquitoes per minute in that area, we're getting a lot of phone calls at that point. So the next slide. The first slide was, no, the one, yep. The slide before this was the ocean side of Sugarloaf. This one is the north side, which is the Gulf side of Sugarloaf. You could see all of the little areas in between that are managed by Florida Fish and Wildlife. And so this is a lot where the negotiations came in. So if we can do more larviciding and do less adulticiding, and it has a restriction, whereas it was 20 mosquitoes per minute on the ocean side of Sugarloaf. On this side of Sugarloaf, for an aerial mission, I needed an average of 10 mosquitoes per minute, and that's throughout that entire area to be able to create a aerial adulticide mission. Next page, please. In Florida Fish and Wildlife, we just renewed this year's agreement. They've added 15 new areas. They keep gaining more lands, mostly offshore lands. We have 23 islands that are regulated. Every single island has a different threshold of where we can truck adulticide or aerial adulticide. For both U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Florida Fish and Wildlife, we can use BTI or BS on any of their properties, no matter how restricted it is, even with the butterflies or any portion of it, even the offshore islands. Those are the only two products within our management agreement that we are allowed to use. On both U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Florida Fish and Wildlife, it is restricted how many aerial adulticide missions and ULV truck adulticide missions we can have per year. Some of the ULV and aerial areas are restricted from any adulticide missions. For Florida Fish and Wildlife, we it was a year of negotiation, especially for this new batch, because there was so many properties added of uh, what how we can give and take. It's very hard to have a restriction that you can never ever adulticide. Um, so we would put thresholds up and try to work with them that way. And with Florida Fish and Wildlife, we do monthly reports. Sometimes that's a lot easier to get it off your plate quicker. And we do renew this annually, and sometimes in the middle of time they may accrue more islands or more areas that we might have to uh, add on to that management agreement. Next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of the Florida Keys. You can see all the areas in red. We are not allowed to aerial adulticide in those areas at all. So this is where we are allowed to put BTI in every single one of those areas. So it's very important to be there and be on time and have it treated when needed. Next slide, please. Our granular larviciding operation, most of the areas we do in unimproved areas. We have the helicopter fleet that we're treating the offshore islands, all in unimproved areas. We also use the wall system because aerial adulticide missions also come when we have Aedes aegypti problems. In 2009 and 2010, we had dengue in the Key West area. In 2020, we had dengue in locally introduced in the Key Largo area. So then we ramped up all of our missions and we started with the wall systems, walls aerially, and to reduce the adulticide missions, because a lot of those areas have those little portions that we cannot adulticide, and you can't cut out a 5-acre plot from an aerial mission. Next slide, please. So in 2008, this is as far as my records that I've been keeping track, you can see how many acres we were treating aerially. For in 2006, we treated 37,542 acres adulticiding. I think we're all in the same position that adulticiding is an important part of your IPM, but we have a lot of people that would like to see that to the very bare minimum, and that's what we've been working on. In 2024, we larvicided, almost doubled of what we started in 2006, and we larvicided granularly 61,000 acres. So you can see in the top graph is the aerial adulticide missions that started in 2006. They were high, and then they go down every year. In Key West last year, we only adulticided Key West 2 times in the entire year. And in trucks, ULV trucks, you could see the large decrease from 2004 all the way to 2024, and all of this is due to the aerial larviciding program, both granular and the walls productions. If we weren't able to larvicide as much as we do, the lines would be still as high, and we wouldn't be protecting the environment as we should, especially in our area. It's very protected. In 2016, we started the walls applications through aerial missions. And in our average from 2016 to 2024, we're averaging over 22,000 acres a year in just those years. And in 2 or 3 years ago, we started with the walls application via truck mounted systems. And as you see, our ULV truck emissions are continuing to reduce because of the Aedes aegypti population as well. Next slide, please. So this is areas treated annually, but with BTI every year. You see in 2026, we started low, and every year it goes higher and higher. And this is actually, this graph is just for the granular BTI. Um, I I've been increasing our walls application as well, but it surely, with the residents in the county, they're very happy to see the helicopter, whether we're adulticiding or not. They they feel that uh, 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 that whatever we're doing, we're taking care of the mosquitoes, and we have a great reputation with all of our county commissioners, our board of directors, and everybody in the county. We're very well known that mosquito control is there, and I think BTI has a lot to do with that. Next slide, please. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Mikki, so much. Again, if you have any questions for Mikki, please just put them in the chat. We have 1 or 2 minutes left in her time.
I do want to go to the next slide because I did have a lot of help from my executive director, Andrea Leal. I'm standing in here for her today. Of course, she's the best, but Larry Reed, our director of research, is always, actually, he was involved in the early 2000s research, and we couldn't have been as far as we are without him.